Greetings everyone, welcome back to the Raider franchise here on Madden 25 here at Pastors Game 2. It is off-season number 3 and we ran into some issues with the recording of this off-season, so I'm going to try to sum it up for you in a bit of a shorter video here. We're going to talk through the end of the last season, where we left off in the last video after the loss to the Baltimore Ravens, and then we're going to go all the way through to the draft. We had some recording issues right at the draft, and so we won't have all the footage, but I think it'll be enough to get you caught up with a lot of the changes that we're doing going into the 2026 and 2027 Raider season, going into what will be for us in this franchise a season number 4. So here's how we started. So last season, we were going into last year just thinking we're going to rebuild, we're going to have a fresh start. Coach Charles Woodson and the front office decided that we're just going to go ahead and trade away some of our best talents. We traded Max Crosby, we traded Devontae Adams. We got money, we got picks. We're like, man, we're just going to go into a rebuilding mode. And boy, did that pay off, man. I mean, we had probably the best draft that I have had in a very long time. And then we've had the best rookie season coming out of that last season. Man, it's crazy. The Raiders went from, I believe it was 8-9. Is that right? Something like that. Either 8-9 or we were under 500. So 8-9 all the way to 16-1 at the end of this season. So some of you have been following along, you know, we made the playoffs for the first time and the rookie class was just balling out all season. All 3 of the big skill positions on the offense, the quarterback, the running back, and the wide receiver, all broke NFL records. The first one I want to talk about is the rookie tailback, Luke Charlton. Luke Charlton was taken in the 3rd round last year. He recorded 20 touchdowns to break the rookie record for running backs, and ended the season with a 90 overall and a superstar X factor. Pretty good for a player taken in the 3rd round. We didn't even expect him to play. We thought that Luke Charlton would back up Ty Chandler, because Ty Chandler had a pretty good season toward the end of the season last year, but Luke Charlton came in and just took over the position. Rookie wide receiver on our team is Ernest Andrews. Andrews was taken in the 2nd round last year, and he broke records for both the receiving yards and touchdowns. Had 1,529 yards in the air and 19 touchdowns, both of them good enough to put him in the history books as receiving rookies. And he go on to win the Offensive Player of the Year and the AFC Rookie of the Year, which of course, right, with those type of numbers, he ends up with an 82 overall, and he is a superstar going into this next season. And finally, we have the quarterback, Johnny Cartwright. Johnny was also a 3rd round pick, had the best rookie quarterback, had the best season as a quarterback in NFL history. Johnny Cartwright throws for 5,386 yards, 59 touchdowns. That's enough not only to get the rookie record, but to get the NFL record overall, passing Peyton Manning with 55 touchdowns for the most touchdowns in a season by any quarterback in NFL history. So Johnny Cartwright, his rookie campaign, just making all sorts of history. He gets rewarded the MVP of the league. He had one of the biggest rating jumps I've ever seen. He jumped from a 69 overall when he was drafted. He's going into this next season with a 91. And again, he's going in at the superstar X factor. So we had to highlight this the final time we're going to talk about it. We had to highlight those 3 players. They really took this team to the next level, got us to the playoffs, and got it done. Now, it wasn't all on the offense. We had some good stuff by the defense as well. Dom Clark, which was our number 1 draft pick last year, he ends up with the AFC Defensive Player of the Year. And then we had a 2nd year breakout. Last year, we really jumped in. I think Zaire Klein is our middle linebacker. I think we took him in the 3rd or 4th round as well. And he played very well, just behind former Raider Max Crosby for Defensive Player of the Year. And then Cooper DeJean gets best cornerback. So we had good play on both the offense and the defensive side of the ball. Last year was so much more than a rebuilding year, man. We got to the playoffs and we did the thing, and it all changed with one excellent draft class. So how did the season end? Well, with all the hype, you'd expect that we might have made it to the Super Bowl, but some of you saw the video already. Lamar Jackson was too much for us in the championship round. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens go on to win the Super Bowl over the Dallas Cowboys. Lamar Jackson gets the MVP. That's what we thought would happen. We said it in the video that the Super Bowl was probably our game. The Raiders and the Ravens was probably the real Super Bowl. We thought the AFC, the winner of that game, would go on to really win the overall Super Bowl. So Lamar Jackson's, congratulations, got his first ring. And, he's going to go probably into NFL history as one of the best quarterbacks who ever laced him up. So we're going to jump now into the off season to really kind of see, like, what do we want to do for the season coming up. So we asked Coach Woodson what he thought, what was some of the game plan that he would be willing to share in a press conference, and he said, quote, it's been great to be a part of something so special. It was a great season and much to celebrate, a lot of coach talk. But the work's not over, he says. The goal has been to win the Super Bowl, and that's still our goal. Records and stats are good, but we still have a long way to go. So Coach Woodson has moved his eyes from just making the playoffs to now winning the big dance, and that's what it sounds like this offseason is going to be about. However, when asked about what kind of moves he would make, Coach Woodson was like, hey, he's not planning on making big moves. We've got some great players here already, and he's looking just to continue to develop this promising young team. So I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of moving and shaking. At least that's not what it sounds like Woodson and company want to do. But we will see some movement and shaking on the coaching staff. Both former coordinators move on from the team, and Woodson's got to replace them. He's able to find Jamie Rodriguez, who's going to take on the new offensive role, and Scott Anderson brings in a different playbook, a little bit of a different philosophy. So we're going to see how those two things work together with Coach Woodson. Will they continue to play the defensive playbook that we did last year, or will they try something new and different with this new defensive coordinator? That's going to be something that we see. But Scott Anderson is going to be the guy who's going to be leading the defense for this team going into the next season. Raiders needed to go ahead and finalize some negotiations before we jump into free agency, and so we had a few players to go ahead and work on. We obviously will accept the option for Brock Bowers. We didn't talk about him in the opener, but Brock Bowers went for 1,486 yards, but he broke a record for the most receiving yards by a tight end in a single season. It didn't show up because Madden doesn't really track that stat, but that's what he did. Brock Bowers is now he has the most receiving yards for a season in NFL history. He also has 17 touchdowns. That did not break a record, but the 1,486 yard did do that. So we're planning on keeping Brock around for a while. And so we're able to pick up his option. Also able to find an agreement with Trey Tucker. I thought Trey was good fill-in receiver when we needed him. Held onto the ball often. He's a short receiver, but I thought he was good, and so we thought we'd bring him back for some depth at wide receiver. All right, so once we left the negotiation table, now we just kind of look at the roster and see like what is going to be our real offensive strategy. So we started looking at each one of the positions, looking for strengths and looking for weaknesses, places that we can find an adjustment. Looked like we had plenty of money. We're good financially with $54 million in the cap space. So there wasn't any big pressing financial concerns. Honestly, there weren't any big pressing concerns, period. Now the team is pretty steady, but there were some places that we thought maybe we could get a little bit better or start to set ourselves up for the future a little bit more. And so those places that we started to pay attention to a little bit more, we're going to be right tackle, right end, cornerback, and wide receiver. We want to come out of this offseason with those positions either having some good depth behind them, or we have made some updates in those particular areas. One of the things we do have to keep our eye on is there's quite a few rookie contracts that are going to be up next year and the year after. And some of those things are going to ask for some big money. Brock Bowers is one of them. The cornerbacks that we have are going to be part of that. We've got quite a few players that are going to demand some bigger contracts. So we are going to need to save money. And that means that maybe we don't need to spend a lot in this particular off season. Before we jump into free agency, we did jump into some trade stuff with the defensive tackle. One of the places that we did want to solidify its defensive tackle position. We thought that we could move on from Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is 30 years old, and he's a pretty good player still. He's going to be a player that for this year, if we can move him, we would gain about 20 million in cap space. And so we started looking at him. Now, Wilkins won't be a good piece on his own because of his age. So we thought we would package him with a second-year receiver, Rashawn Williams. Rashawn Williams is 22 years old and has a 75 overall rating. Not the type of receiver that really is going to fit our team and our kind of way of playing. And so we thought we would go ahead and package a young and up-and-coming receiver with the defensive tackle of Christian Wilkins and see if we had any takers. The Bengals were the first to give us a shot, and they offered Greg Mooney. Mooney is a second-year wide receiver, had some really good potential. Last year, he was about 10 yards away from a 1,000-yard season, so he was a great receiver for them in a crowded receiving core in the Cincinnati Bengal team. Had a nice dynamic with his other receivers. He's 6'2", has solid hands, and was someone that we wanted to keep in mind. But then we got a call from the Rams, and they were looking to send us Daxton Hill and some pick considerations. Free safety was definitely a need for us. We had Tyrann Mathieu last year, and he was just okay, wasn't great. So we hoped we thought maybe we would try to address Daxton Hill in the draft, but turns out that we'll see. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But Daxton Hill looked like he had the kind of things that we would want. He's a younger player. We could keep him for a couple more years. I think we decided that the Rams were offering a better deal for what we were needing. So we decide that Daxton is going to be the player that we go. So we take the Rams deal. We send Christian Wilkins and Rashawn Williams to Los Angeles for Daxton Hill, who will now don the black and silver of the Raiders. All right, so with that deal done, we jump into free agency and we start taking a look at some of those position needs and seeing if we can find some players there. So we looked at about 5 players in the free agency. We're excited to report that all 5 of the negotiated targets were successful. So here's a few of the things. You can kind of see it on the screen probably there, but on the offensive side, we needed depth at the left tackle with Dan Moore. We added right guard Cody Monch over 2 players that would provide some good insurance. Neither one of those are probably going to be starters, but they will back up the starters that we have there. We're hoping to try to get some natural help at the right tackle position, but there just wasn't a whole lot of pickings at right tackle, which is really what we need to work on. We also brought back the former first-round pick and Michael Mayer at tight end. Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame was traded a couple years back I think he was part of the trade. I can't remember where the trade was, but we needed him. We needed to trade him. He was a young talent that we traded away. And then he ends up in free agency, so we're going to bring him back. He's going to be a good backup to Brock Bowers, a great blocker, solid route runner, soft hands. He's going to be a good addition to the team with the loss of the tight end that we had last year. I think it was Jelani Woods that we had that will no longer be with the team. On the defensive side of the ball, we're hoping to shore up some of the secondary. We talked about the free safety already, but we also wanted to get a little bit better at cornerback. So we looked at Keely Ringo at the cornerback position, and Keely felt like he would fit right into our scheme. Charles Woodson wants a fast and quick secondary, and Keely does have that kind of athleticism. He'll compete for the starting role in the slot. And with so many of the contracts, cornerback is one of those places where we've got 3 or 4 players with 2 years left on their deal. So we've got to figure out, well, we probably won't be able to bring back everybody. So backfilling this cornerback position is going to be something that's going to help us in the future. Hopefully Keely Ringo will be a good hit and he'll be able to stick around and help us through that in upcoming seasons. We also added defensive tackle Gervon Dexter. Gervon Dexter will fill in the defensive tackle position left behind by Wilkins, and that'll give us a chance to continue to work on Byron Young, which is the player that we really want to try to develop. Byron Young had some pretty good plays when he got a chance to in the last season. We're hoping that he can step up and make a difference. So that's what we did in free agency. All right, so looking at the draft, we started to pay attention to some of the prospects, and we invited the scouts into the meeting room, and what they did, they brought to us about 7 players that they will want us to keep our eye on. Now, again, our expectation for this draft is not high. I think we're the 30th pick, and we don't have a second round pick at all, and we're just not depending on the draft to give us some big players. This draft is really just a let's fill in some of the gaps kind of draft. So the first one on the list is the free safety out of Washington State. His name is Otis Reese. Reese is projected to go in the 2nd or 3rd round, but he's got some pretty good athletic ability and skill in coverage. He looks to me like a player that could slip under the radar, and if he's there for us in the 3rd round, that's a player that we would absolutely go after and take. It's gonna be tough though, because again, we don't have a second round. If we had a second round, I probably would go for him, but we'll see what he does. But really like him, he could be a player for us. Next on the list is left outside linebacker Greg Larson. Greg Larson, man, this guy has 1st round talent. He's coming out of Georgia, a huge player, 6'6", great tackler, run defender, struggles in coverage though. So feels like he should be on the line or on the edge. And he would be a solid player for that right end that we talked about earlier. And I'm not sure he's going to fall to us. He looks like a really good talent, not top 5, but definitely like top 15 or 16. But if he falls to us at 30, then we're probably absolutely going to take Greg Larson. Number 3 on the list is cornerback Greg Forney. He's out of USC. Looks like he would strengthen our secondary quite a bit. He stood out as an athlete at the combine, shows good coverage skills for both man and zone, which is what we're looking for. I think we had a B and a B in those areas. The scouts are grading him as a 1st round projection. So they think this is a sleeper. So Greg Forney out of USC could be a player for us to keep our eye on. He'll be someone we have to really deliberate if he shows up at the 30th pick in the 1st round. There's another cornerback on the list that shows up next, and he's out of Texas Tech. His name is Brandon Lane. Brandon is another well-rounded player in the draft, 6 foot, good field smart. So actually, that's the difference between Lane and Forney. Forney probably has the athleticism, but Lane has the play recognition and the awareness, and he's also not a bad athlete. So Brandon Lane would also be a great pick for us. He's projected as a round 1 talent. Again, may not get to us at 30, but if he does, man, if Lane, Forney, and Larson is there at 30, then it's going to be tough for us to make some decisions there. Okay, so the next one, number 5 on our list, is offensive lineman Cole Schaub out of Michigan State. Cole is probably the best run blocker in the draft. He plays at the center position. Got a pretty nasty streak when he brings a lot of power and force to the offensive line. The player would be hard to pass on as well if we got to the 1st round. But I mean, we would pass on him if we had those other players that we talked about. But if he was the only one there, and we might pick up Cole Schaub and see what he does at the tackle position. Number 6 on the list is the sleeper hit of our list, and probably my favorite player on this list. His name is Wyatt Kearney. Wyatt is 5'8" and one of the fastest players in the draft. He's listed as a wide receiver. His current projection is undrafted. This is a player that we don't even think is going to be in the league. But boy, Wyatt Kearney's got a lot of heart. He's a speedy receiver and a kickoff returner. Could stretch the field. I think he would be a steal in the draft. And then lastly, number 7 is the left end, Alani Drayton. Alani looks like a smart and talented athletic player. He just looks like a solid pick at left end. Again, we would probably try him at right end. We see him at left end, but we would move him to the right end and have him compete with Tyree Wilson over there and see if he could make a name for himself over there. Big guy. Could also play defensive tackle because he's that height, but he has a little speed though. So it feels like, I don't know, we're gonna try him. If we do get him, if we do draft him, then we might try him at the end position and see what he can do there, and that would help us with that particular area. Let's look at the 7 players that we are kind of interested in going into the draft. All right, so before we jump into the draft, there's one more trade conversation that we wanted to have. So with the addition of Braxton Hill, Marcus Epps, free safety Marcus Epps, who has been kind of in a rocky relationship with the Raiders. We've been looking at trading Epps last year. We looked at, it's very clear to Marcus that the Raiders don't value him. And now with this move with Braxton, he wants to leave. So he's got a couple more years, he thinks, on his left in his tank. And so he wants to go and try to get to a different team. Now Marcus is 31 years old, so again, same like Christian Wilkins, like his trade market value is low. So if we trade Marcus, we'll have to package him with someone, and so we decide to package him with cornerback Joshua Williams. Now Joshua Williams is a lot like the receiver that we traded in that he's just not the type of corner that would fit our team. Doesn't have the speed. But he's a younger player and has a decent rating. So we decided to package Marcus Epps and Joshua Williams just to see who would be interested in that combination. And we got a call from the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles decided that they would offer Nakobe Dean along with some draft consideration. And we took a look at Nakobe, and Nakobe could be something special for us. So we like Nakobe. So we thought, okay, let's take a look at that. So we looked at it, and it looks like the Eagles are willing to take Joshua Williams to kind of supplement that cornerback position, and they needed help at free safety. And so with those two things, the Raiders and the Eagles agreed to a deal that sends Marcus Epps and Joshua Williams to Philly and brings Nakobe Dean to the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, so we get into the draft finally, and the draft day is finally here. We ran into some issues with the recording here, and so it's going to be a little funky. I'm gonna have to tell you about a lot of things instead of show you. So I'm sorry about that, but these are exciting times. When we get to the draft, it's always fun. Again, Coach Woodson not looking to do a whole lot in this draft, and so I'm just gonna be honest with you. We didn't get a lot of good picks this draft. There's only gonna be a couple players that we really hold on to, and the rest of the players, I don't think they even really made it. So, but we'll talk a little bit about what we did, and then we'll wrap it up. So the Raiders, we have the 30th pick in the draft, and I know we talked about left outside linebacker Greg Larson. He was probably the first person on our draft board. He was drafted by the Vikings at number 13. Brandon Lane was also on our list at the cornerback position. That was the 6-foot guy who had smarts. He was drafted by the Bears at number 9. And so that left Alani Drayton, free safety Otis Reese, and cornerback Greg Forney as options once we got our chance to pick. And so with the free safety position kind of filled a little bit with Braxton Hill, and the cornerback positions filled with Reese and Nakobe Dean, we decided that maybe that left end or that right end position was something that we really need to go ahead and work on for this pick. And so we picked Alani Drayton as our first round pick for this year. Alani Drayton will again be moved to the right end and will compete with Tyree Wilson for the starting role in that spot. We moved past his deal pretty quickly, so we didn't get a chance to show that he's not a hidden dev rate player. He's a normal dev rate, but he has some pretty good stats, so we'll just have to see. But that's our pick. Alani Drayton will be the first round draft pick for this year. The next pick this year would be in the 3rd round, and we didn't have a second, and that pick would go to a right tackle. Went to Barry Colors. Barry Colors was not a very good pick for us. He has a small chance of making the team. It was a reach for us, and that's all we're going to say about that. Barry, we thought we would try to do something at right tackle, maybe find a diamond in the rough in right tackle position, but it just didn't happen. In the 4th round, though, we did get the steal of the draft, and you know his name. You should remember it. He's the 5'8" receiver out of Arkansas. Again, showed a lot of moxie in the combine and private workouts. Wyatt Kearney, the speedster with amazing hands, will join the Raiders this season. I'm super hyped for this pick right here. Man, he has a hidden dev trait, and he's being described as having elite top speed. We see that he's got 98 speed, 98 acceleration, and he's got an amazing ability to catch spectacular catch or catch in traffic ball. So he's 5'8" and can hold on to the ball. It's a great start. Something to work with a young player here. I think the sky is the limit for this kid. So excited for him to join us, Wyatt Kearney, in the Raider uniform. And like I said, the rest of the draft is pretty unremarkable. We tried a couple more times to try to get some offensive tackle stuff, but it just didn't work out. Each pick just kind of was worse than the last. So we really didn't keep anybody but Alani Drayton and Wyatt out of this draft. And finally, we had one more trade. We had one more thing to look at. We still were trying to deal with the right tackle position, see if we could do something at that area. So with the draft completed, we thought we would look at one more trade talk, and so we looked at the cornerback position. Now that we had several cornerbacks, we looked at Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez was our best quarterback. He's 86 overall, 25 years old. He's exactly the kind of cornerback that we really would want to keep, if we're honest. But we really wanted to get better on the offensive line, believing that this year the defense is going to come after the quarterback after having the tape on him being able to throw the ball deep. So I think the offensive line is going to be really important. So we decided that we would go ahead and shop Gonzalez along with Divine Diablo to make some space, some room. Gonzalez's contract would be up in 2 years, like a lot of the other players, and so that would help us in that way. And then Divine Diablo, a little bit older player who we can move on from. So we found a deal with the Tampa Bay Bucks. They would bring us Jamel Dean and Graham Norton along with some pick consideration. Now, Dean is an older cornerback, so he's going to replace Gonzalez at the cornerback position. He's 30 years old, 81 overall, good enough to really be our second best cornerback based on that rating. But honestly, we're probably going to let him come off the bench and give Jacorian Bennett and Camarion Richardson one more season to try to really make a case for them being a part of this team for the long haul. They're both very fast players. They're both the kind of players that we want to see do well, and so Dean gives us some backup position for that corner. And then Graham Norton is a offensive lineman that can play both the tackle and the center position. And so we're going to move Graham Norton from the center position to the tackle position and allow him to help fill out that offensive line. And so with that trade, that will wrap up the off-season edition of the Raider franchise here on Pastors Game 2. Excited for season number 4. Expect a roster review and a look at the preseason in the next video. If you like the video, then like the video. Let me know what you think about the moves we made, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. This is Pastors Game 2. God loves you and so do I, and I will see you when I see you. Peace.